Gluten-free Christmas fruit mince pies. Welcome to Believe It's Not Gluten, the home of amazing recipes for the gluten intolerant. Amazing because they taste so good, no one will know they're gluten-free. Last week I posted the fruit mince recipe, and now here's a delicious, soft, fine, sweet pastry to go with that. So start by getting 125 grams of nice soft butter into a medium mixing bowl and adding 125 grams of castor sugar. Then you just need to cream the butter and sugar as normal. This will take a few minutes. And wipe down the sides of the bowl as you need to. Just keep going until it starts getting pale and creamy looking. Then add 3 egg yolks. Some vanilla essence, and I think these also need a little almond essence. If you don't like almond essence, don't worry, you can leave it out if you want, but even if you put it in, you don't actually taste it. It's just that the pastry is quite fine, being gluten-free, and the almond essence just adds a little bit of flavour to it. So give that another beat. Get it nice and creamy looking. Once again, wipe down the sides of the bowl as you need to. And then in with the flour mix. Try and give it a bit of a stir first so you don't get flour around your kitchen. I found a new use for the silicone bowls. You can fold it over when you beat the first time to try and stop the flour flying out. So just do the best you can with the beaters, and you may find you need to then use your hand to form it into a ball of dough. And even bring it out onto the bench to make it all easier. Now you could use this straight away, but it's a little bit sticky at this stage, so it is easier if you just leave it for half an hour to settle itself down and let the xanthan gum thicken things up a bit. If you're rolling it out, you may just find you needed to use a fair bit extra flour to make it rollable, and if you're pressing it into a muffin pan, you may find it's just quite sticky on your fingers like this is at the moment. So best if you can leave it, or you can leave it in the fridge, get it out the next day. Doesn't really matter when you do it. If you do leave it in the fridge, just get it back to room temperature before you try to use it, and you probably find you need to knead it a bit and get it back from a crumbly stage to smooth again. And of course, if you're leaving it more than half an hour, you'd want to wrap it in plastic wrap. Now you have a choice. You can either roll the pastry out with a rolling pin, or you can just push balls of the dough into mini muffin pans. For mini muffins, just roll small balls of dough and then push them into the muffin pans with your thumb. I find it easier to push them with my thumb and then work the pastry around up the sides of the muffin shape. It's also better to try and manoeuvre it at this stage so the sides are pretty equal. You can see here one side is too high, and then it's hard to fix that later. So if you push it around as you're doing it so that it's equal, that doesn't happen. Just don't make your pastry too thick here, or you'll have all pastry and not much fruit mince, which isn't nice. If you're using silicone, it's time to slide these onto a baking tray. If you're using a metal muffin pan, just grease them really well with butter before you start, or they'll stick. This silicon's really well seasoned, so it doesn't need to be greased before. If you're worried about them sticking in a metal pan, you can see our video here on how to stop things sticking. And you can leave them as they are or crumble some of the leftover pastry on top. Then they go into the oven for about 15 minutes until they're nicely browned. Leave them on a cooling rack in the pans for 10 to 15 minutes before you try to get them out. With silicone you can just pop them out. With metal pans, just use a knife to gently ease them out. And as long as you've greased them really well, they won't be a problem. Now if you want to roll out your pastry, grease your trays really well with butter first. If you don't do that, you'll probably find your mince pies stick when you get them out, which is very upsetting once you've gone to all the work of making them. So don't be shy about greasing the pans. The pastry is really easy to roll out between 2 sheets of baking paper, so just take half your ball of dough, squash it out with your fingers on 1 sheet of baking paper. This just means a bit less rolling that you need to do. Cover it with the other sheet of paper and then roll it out until it stops thinning out easily. Once you've done it a few times, you'll feel the difference. Then lift up the top sheet of paper. And as this pastry is a bit sticky, it will need a little bit of flour. I think tapioca flour is the best for this, but you could just use the flour mix we use for everything. So cover it with the paper again, turn it over, take off the paper and flour the other side as well. You can try and smooth out the edges here as well. That will help stop ragged pieces on the edges that you can't use later. Roll it again, and once it's getting close to the right thickness, I like to use a guide to help me so that I can get it more uniform. Once you've got it to this thickness, just release it again, and then because this is a bit thick, I give it an extra roll just to get it a bit thinner. Then use your cutter to cut out the shapes and gently ease them into the pie trays. You can see the thickness of the pastry, and you wouldn't want it any thicker than what I have here. Then grab your second half of pastry and repeat all that with the leftovers and keep going until you've used it all. Depending on how thickly you're rolling them out and what you want to put on the tops of them, you should get at least 24 mince pies from this pastry recipe. By the time you're getting to the second or third roll of the pastry, you'll probably find that you don't need to keep adding flour when it sticks to the paper. Just lifting the top sheet and pulling it back, turning it over and doing the same on the other side is enough to keep it working easily. I found these rulers that I think give about a 3mm thickness of pastry. This is probably just a little bit thick. I have some others that give a 2cm thickness, but that's too thin, and the pastry then's not thick enough to hold the fruit mince once they're cooked. So somewhere in between 2 and 3 would be ideal. If you're using rulers or a guide, you can tell when it gets to the right thickness because you'll hear the rolling pin hitting the guides as you roll. So when you're rolling out the pastry between paper, you roll it until it stops thinning out easily, or when your rolling seems to stop working. When this happens, it's because it's stuck to the paper and you need to release it so you can work with it. just press harder when it doesn't seem to be working. That won't help. You just need to release the dough, either by lifting the paper, turning it over and lifting it again, or using a little flour if needed. I find the best way to smooth out the pastry is to smooth it from the inside of the pie, not by trying to even out the outside edges. They tend to look neater if you do it this way. For the tops, you can do whatever you like. You can give them solid tops or leave them open or do stars or just a few crumbles of pastry. It's probably good though to do the tops thinner than the bases, otherwise just a bit much pastry and not enough fruit mince in each pie. When done, they go into the oven for about 15 minutes. When they come out, as before, leave them in the tins for 10 to 15 minutes and then gently ease them out with a knife so they can finish cooling on a rack to make sure they don't get soggy on the bottom. If you want to dress them up a bit, sprinkle them with icing sugar, and there you have it, delicious mince pies. No one will know they're gluten-free, just customise them as you like. Hope you enjoy them. Please visit the blog for the full recipe and plenty of tips so you can make them successfully yourself. If you like this, please subscribe to our channel below and give us a thumbs up. Make your comments or questions or requests here or join us on Facebook. And please share our videos as much as you can. Thank you for watching, and believe it, it's not gluten.